Previously on PERIHELIon, Year 1 on Draken. 5 women built a life from wreckage. Food, shelter, fuel, and the bones of a ship that might carry them home. In the final month of that year, Bess found the port interface calibrated in ways she hadn't done. She wrote one line in her log and told no one. Year 2, Month 1. Everything was working. That was the unsettling thing about the beginning of Year 2. How much was working? The ship frame stood in the clearing, taller now, more defined, Bess's design taking shape in metal and Draken timber. The refinery station hummed at low power, processing another batch of basin compound. May's garden had expanded twice and was in its 3rd expansion. The camp was not temporary anymore. It had the look of something that intended to stay, even though the women inside it intended to leave. Minty moved through the morning with her usual efficiency, checking the structural braces on the ship frame, confirming the water collection overnight yield, starting the fire from embers she maintained in a covered pit. She was the reason mornings worked. She stopped. At the base of the ship frame's port side strut, a brace she had left partially secured yesterday, intending to return to it this morning with the proper tool. The brace was fully secured. She crouched, examined it. The fastening was correct. Better than correct. She looked around the camp. No one else was up yet. She touched the secured brace, stood, looked at the tree line, looked back at the brace. She went to start breakfast. She didn't say anything. In the forward section of the Meridian's remnant, which Kay had converted into a working laboratory, she arrived at her usual time, set down her water, picked up where she'd left off, stopped. On the refinery output shelf, where she kept the processed fuel compound in labeled containers, there was a container she had not filled. She knew every container by sight. She'd labeled them herself. This one was hers, the right container, her handwriting on the label. But it was full, more than full, more than a month of her output, refined to a purity she had been working toward for weeks and had not yet achieved. She took it down slowly, ran the standard test. The yield was higher than anything she had produced. She looked at her work log. Last entry, 2 nights ago. Output, 30% of what was now in this container. She set it down. She walked out of the workspace, back to the fire, and poured herself a cup of water, drank it slowly, looking at the ship frame. Minty passed with a toolkit. "How's the port strut this morning?" Kay asked, neutrally. Minty stopped. A careful pause. "It's fine. I thought you were going back to it today." Minty met her eyes. So did I. A beat. Something passed between them. Not an answer. Just a recognition that there was a question. "After breakfast," Kay said. "You and me." "Yes." Behind the refinery station, Kay showed Minty the container. Minty showed Kay the brace. "When did you notice yours?" Kay asked. "This morning." "You?" "This morning." "Did you notice anything last night? Movement? Sound?" "Nothing," Minty said. "I was on watch until the 3rd hour. Nothing crossed the perimeter." And yet? Kay looked at the full container. "This is not the first time," she said. "What do you mean?" "There was an anomaly in month 6, a sample batch I'd run. The yield came back higher than it should have been based on the input. I attributed it to instrument error." "I don't think it was instrument error." "How long has this been happening?" Minty asked. "I don't know," Kay said quietly. Minty looked at the tree line. "Who do we tell?" "Everyone. But not yet. Not until I know more." "That's a decision that affects everyone." "I know. 2 days. Let me look at the data. Then we talk." Minty looked at the tree line for a long moment. Her posture held not fear, but calculation. 2 days, she said. The failed communications rig had become something different. Iola had rebuilt it not to transmit, but to listen. A passive sensor array, scanning the local electromagnetic spectrum for anything that wasn't Draken's background noise. She'd been running it for 2 months. Mostly what she got was the planet's own systems, geological signatures, the low-frequency hum of the basin's mineral deposits, atmospheric cycles she'd learned to read like weather. That morning, she got something else, a reading, brief, 11 seconds. A tight, patterned signal from a bearing of approximately 800 meters southwest. Not random. Patterned signals are not random. She recalibrated, waited. She stared at the display, marked the time, marked the bearing. She wrote nothing yet. She didn't write things she couldn't be sure of, a discipline from years of journalism. But she sat up straighter. She watched the display with a focus that didn't break for the rest of the morning. In the northwest quadrant, May was on her extended survey. The geometric growing formations were more extensive here than anywhere else on the planet. She was following a marked path she'd laid herself, noting changes from her last visit. She stopped. On the flat ledge where she staged her collection work, a surface she had cleared herself, recognizable by the scratch marks from her sorting tools. There were specimens, not specimens she'd collected. She was certain of this because she knew every item she had collected. She had written them all down. These were organized in a logical sequence, by approximate height, then by structural complexity. The notation markers placed beside each one, small chips of white mineral she used for marking, were in positions that suggested a methodology. Not her methodology exactly, but analogous. As if someone had watched her work and approximated the system. She crouched beside them, looked at them for a long time. She opened her log and checked her last survey entry for this quadrant. These specimens were from areas she hadn't reached yet, ahead of her survey line. Something had surveyed them first. She didn't touch them. She opened her log and began drawing what she saw. Every specimen, every marker, every detail. She worked in silence for a long time. When she was done, she carefully, deliberately left the specimens exactly as she found them. On her way back to camp, she passed through an area she'd surveyed a dozen times. She stopped. 3 notes. The call from the tree line. But this time, she was in the tree line. And it was coming from somewhere very close, perhaps 30 feet. She turned slowly toward the sound. Silence. She waited. Silence. After a full minute, she kept walking. She didn't run. That evening, Bess was in her workshop. Always building, yes. But today she was also going through something with a focused, private attention. She was checking her log against every component in the ship frame. Every piece she'd worked on, in order. Every anomaly noted. The port interface from month 10. 3 smaller calibrations she'd marked as resolved, don't remember resolving, and moved past. A joining weld on the midframe that was cleaner than her equipment should allow. She wrote them all in a column on a new page, read them again. Then she closed the log and went back to building. She was not ready to say it out loud yet. She needed the words to be right before she said them. Kay was alone. The camp was quiet. Minty on watch, the others asleep. She had spent the day pulling every anomaly she could identify from her records. The instrument readings that came back high, the fuel container that morning, the sample batch in month 6, a thermal reading in month 8 she'd flagged as sensor error, a heat signature, low level, moving steadily along the southern perimeter. Gone when she rechecked, moving along the perimeter. She added it to the list. She read the list. "How long have you been here?" she said quietly, to no one. She picked up her pen and wrote, Every anomaly corresponds to a moment of need or difficulty. The port interface. Bess was struggling. The fuel batch. Output had plateaued for 3 weeks. The strut brace. Minty's schedule was behind. The thermal reading. The night we had the atmospheric storm. She stared at what she'd written. It's been watching. And when it watches long enough, it helps. Year 2, month 2. 3 days after the morning with the fuel container, Kay had called this meeting. She didn't say what it was about, but they all came with the same expression. The one you wear when you know you're about to be told something you've already half suspected. Kay didn't ease into it. I need everyone to tell me something they've noticed that they haven't mentioned, she said. A silence. Then, slowly, around the fire, they did. Minty, the brace, the fuel container, and one other thing she hadn't told Kay. A tool she'd been missing for 2 weeks, which appeared on her workbench in month 11 with no explanation. Bess, the port interface, 3 calibrations, the weld, a component she needed that appeared in her parts tray after she'd searched it thoroughly the previous day. May, the specimens, the notation markers, the 3-note call from 30 feet, Iola, the scanner readings, 8 of them, across 2 months, always the same bearing range, between 600 and 900 meters, always when she was alone at the array. As each woman spoke, Iola wrote. By the time they were done, she had a full page of notes. She read it back to them, in order, by date. The first one I can confirm, not the first one that may have happened, but the first one anyone noticed, is from month 10 of year 1. Bess, the port interface. She read from her notes. Since then, 9 separate events across 5 months, every one of them helpful. Every one of them corresponding to something we needed. She looked up. Something is watching us, and it has been, at minimum, since month 10 of year 1. I don't think that's when it started, May said quietly. Everyone looked at her. The formation in the northwest quadrant, the geometric growth pattern. I've been dating it by growth rate for 2 months. The oldest formations are roughly 2 years old. We've been on Dracan for 14 months. So it was here before we were, Iola said. I think it's been here a long time before we were. The weight of it settled over them. All right, Bess said, as practical as always. What do we know about it? We know it's observant, Kay said. It responds to need, not to schedule. So it's intelligent. The interventions are too specific for anything else. And it's been in our camp multiple times without us seeing it. Or we've seen it and didn't know what we were looking at, Minty said. The first week, I thought I heard something in the wreckage at night. I attributed it to the hull settling. The thermal reading in month 8, Kay said. Along the southern perimeter, that was a body. Whatever it is has mass, generates heat. The scanner readings, May added. They come from a consistent radius, not random directions. It maintains a distance. A safe distance, Bess said. From its perspective, it keeps a distance. It doesn't communicate directly, but it intervenes, Iola said, still writing. It helped us, and didn't tell us it was helping us. She looked up. Why? Because it wasn't sure about us yet, Bess said eventually. Or because it doesn't know how, Minty said quietly. The question of what they should do about it moved around the fire. We don't know what it is or what it wants, Minty said. Until we do, we should treat this as a security situation. It's had 14 months to be a security situation, Bess said. It hasn't done anything threatening. That we know of. Everything we know points the same direction, Minty, Kay said. It helps. It watches from a distance. it doesn't approach. Everything we know is what it's chosen to show us, Minty said. That's not the same thing as everything there is. She was not wrong. In biology, May said, measured, when a species maintains observation distance and performs indirect beneficial behaviors, it typically indicates intelligence combined with caution. It's not predatory behavior. Predators don't clean up after you. This isn't a biology problem, May. No, but the principles aren't irrelevant. What if it can't communicate? Iola said. She'd been quiet until now. With us. What if it watches and helps? Because that's all the interface it has. What do you mean? We can't reach Eden Beta. Our communication array is useless against the atmosphere. What if whatever is out there has the same problem in reverse? It knows we're here. It can see what we need, but it has no way to speak to us that we'd understand. So, it does what it can. From a distance. That's lonely, Bess said quietly. Nobody had a response to that. We don't change anything yet, Kay said. We keep working. We watch back. And if it wants to close the distance, we let it. Carefully, Minty said firmly. Carefully. Yes. Late that night, the camp asleep, Minty on watch. Iola was at the array. The scanner ran. She watched the display. At 0217 by her ship clock, the reading appeared. Same bearing, southwest, 812 meters. The signal pattern she'd come to recognize. She watched it. It held for 43 seconds, the longest yet. She wrote it down. Then, slowly, she did something she hadn't done before. She turned the array to transmit on the same frequency, not a voice signal, just a pattern. 3 short pulses, mirroring, approximately, the 3-note call from the tree line. She waited. For 30 seconds. Nothing. Then the reading on her display shifted. The signal at 800 meters moved. Not away. Closer. 640 meters. It held. Iola sat very still. She transmitted again. 3 pulses. The signal moved again. 500 meters. Held. Then, it withdrew. Steadily. Deliberately. Back to 800 meters. Then further, until the reading faded. As if it had decided. Not yet, but soon. Iola looked at her display for a long time. Then she wrote, "It came closer when I called. It left on its own terms. It is not afraid of us. It is deciding about us." She underlined the last 4 words. It is deciding about us. 3 days later, Bess was alone at the ship frame in the first light, before anyone else was up. She ran her hand along a hull panel, stopped at a join, a weld she'd done 2 weeks ago that she was never quite happy with. She'd been meaning to come back to it. The weld was different. She crouched, examined it. The imperfection she'd left, a slight irregularity in the bead, was gone. Corrected. Better than her equipment should allow. She sat back on her heels. "You could have just asked," she said quietly, to no one. Or maybe to someone. She looked toward the sound. Nothing visible. "I'm going to find out what you are," she said, still quiet. "I want you to know that. Not a threat. Just, I need to understand what I'm working alongside." She looked at the corrected weld. At the ship becoming real around her. "But thank you. For the port interface. For this." "Gerald couldn't weld for anything, so you're already ahead of him." She stood, got her tools, started her day. The 5 women sat around the fire. They'd been talking less about it openly since the first conversation. Not because they'd resolved anything, but because they'd settled into a watchful coexistence, aware, careful, not afraid. The scanner reading had been there since dusk. They all knew it was there. They'd stopped pretending not to notice. 840 meters, May said, looking at the display. It's been consistent since the 7th hour, Iola said. It was there last night too, Kay said. Minty? I saw it on the display, Minty confirmed from the watch. Didn't move all night. It's staying closer than it used to, Bess said. I've been tracking the distance, Iola said. The average has decreased by roughly 100 meters a month since I first noticed the readings. It's getting more comfortable. Or more curious, May said. Maybe both, Bess said. What happens when it decides it's ready? Minty asked finally. We deal with that when it comes, Kay said. I'd like a plan before it comes. The plan is, we're kind, we're cautious, and we don't do anything that looks like a threat. That's not a plan, Bess said. That's a disposition. It's all we have. It's more than we think, Iola said, not looking up from her writing. It's been watching us for at least 14 months. It's seen how we work, how we treat each other, how we respond to failure and difficulty. If it's intelligent, it's already made a significant assessment of who we are. We didn't know we were being evaluated. She looked up. The question is whether we passed. The reading shifted. 840 meters, then 810, then 800. They watched the display. Then, slowly, deliberately, the reading moved away. Back to 900, then further until it dropped off the range. And as it went, from somewhere far in the dark, 3 notes, then 4. Did it just? May began. Yes, Iola said, already writing. 4 notes is different from 3 notes, Bess said. Yes. What does 4 notes mean? May looked at the dark where the reading had been. I think it might mean something changed. 14 months, Minty said quietly, to herself, to her daughter who couldn't hear her, to the planet, to whatever was out there in the dark. We're still here. Something has been here all along. Now it knows we know.